My name is John McFedrin with the Department of Environmental Protection and the Invasive Aquatic Species Program. And with us tonight also from the DEP is Karen Hannell, who works on the Invasive Species Program, and Mary Breton, who works on many programs and makes it so we get things done when it comes down to it. If you have any technical problems, what you could try to do is to go to, actually, first of all, I will say that I think Mary is going to mute everybody if she hasn't already. And we prefer that you stay on mute because it minimizes feedback. I am going to provide a presentation after which there'll be questions and answers and discussion. What we'd like you to do is to submit questions using the chat feature on Zoom. And on my screen, there is at the bottom of the screen, when I put my cursor on the screen, it says chat right in the middle at the bottom. And if you click on that, you can send a chat to everyone. At the bottom, it says to everyone. And below that, you can type your message, such as, glad you all made it. And that message went to everybody. Oh, Mary already tested the chat also at the same time. So there, the chat is on the right side. And if you want to send a chat to one individual, actually, let me back up one step. So you click on the chat, it shows up on the right side. And then if you want to close the chat, at the top, there's a little down arrow next to the word, to the left of the word chat. And then there's an X for close, and you click and you can close it. If you want to send a chat to somebody in particular, you can go to click on them. I'm clicking on Sue Neal in the upper right-hand corner. I click on the blue square with the dots, and it says chat, and I can send a note just to Sue Neal. So please use the chat to submit questions. If you have technical difficulties, you could also raise your hand by clicking on participants, which is on my screen, it is to the left of the chat. You click on participants, and on my screen on the right side, I see the list of participants. Everybody is muted. And at the bottom of that list of participants it says raise hand. You could raise your hand and Mary will try to help you, or you could also chat directly to Mary if you're having any difficulties with the technical aspect here. Karen is going to keep track of the questions, and Mary will also monitor that so that we'll be able to respond to them after the presentation. This is being recorded, so if there are people who couldn't make it, they'll have the opportunity to see that. Mary, I believe we'll be able to post that on our webpage. Is that correct? Yes, it is. Right now we have 30 people on, and unless Karen and Mary alert me that I've forgotten something to start, we will get going. Okay. I'm going to share my screen, and then I will start a PowerPoint presentation. Oh, there we go. Let's see. Okay. Again, welcome everybody. I'm John McFedrin, a biologist with the department's invasive aquatic species program, that is the Department of Environmental Protection. As I mentioned, Karen Hanel is on the call, along with Mary Breton from our department. We also have, I know, representatives of Friends of the Cobbossee Watershed and the Annabessacook Lake Improvement Association, and possibly Cobbossee Watershed District. I haven't looked to see the list. A public meeting is required in the process of applying for permission to use an herbicide in a Maine lake. This evening I want to talk about a number of things, starting off with some background on the invasive plant that's in Annabessacook, variable leaf water milfoil. Discuss the broader response to the infestation, not just what we're proposing with the herbicide treatment, but also discuss the spread prevention measures that have been ongoing for several years, plant removal efforts, plant locations where we have found the plants, this particular invasive plant within Annabessacook, the objective of the herbicide treatment, how the herbicide acts, its mode of action, and the characteristics and risks. Also discuss plant and herbicide concentration monitoring and potential treatment schedule. This image shows the known populations of invasive aquatic plants in the state. The yellow square represents infestations of variable leaf water milfoil, which is the same plant that is, which is the plant that is in Annabessacook Lake. You'll see that there are many more yellow squares than any other icon on this map. Variable leaf water milfoil is the most prevalent plant in the state. We also have curly leaf pondweed, European frog's bit, which is only known from Cobbossee Lake, brittle water nymph, hydrilla, and Eurasian water milfoil. Notice there's one outlier that was confirmed in 2019. That is the yellow square in interior Washington County on the far right of the map. It's found from Big Lake in that part of the state, which was a disappointing find last year. Any find is disappointing, but this opens up a whole new point of spread for invasive plants in the state. The variable leaf water milfoil, again, is the invasive plant that we found in Annabessacook. It's not the same species that you may have heard about in Cobbossee last year. There was a discovery in 2018 in Cobbossee of Eurasian water milfoil that the DEP tried to remove by hand for a year, couldn't get it under control, and used an herbicide there in a very small acre, in a 4-acre area there last year. It's the same herbicide that we're proposing to use on Annabessacook. Again, the variable leaf water milfoil, the one in Annabessacook, is the most prevalent invasive aquatic plant in Maine. It was first found as a floating fragment by a CBI, excuse me, or a courtesy boat inspector at the Wagon Road ramp in 2013. Milfoils can be difficult to identify unless you have flower or fruit. There are 6 other species of milfoil in the state. In Cobbossee, in Annabessacook alone, there are 2 species of milfoil that look quite similar to the variable leaf water milfoil. To determine exactly what plant it is, and definitively, there are a couple of laboratories that have developed methods for genetic testing. In 2013, the fragment that we found was sent to a lab and confirmed to be variable water milfoil. In 2014, there was a complete lake survey done, and 2 rooted plants were found. There have since been annual lake-wide surveys that are coordinated by the Cobbossee Watershed District and require lots of effort from Annabessacook Lake Improvement Association, Annabessacook Lake, and ALEA volunteers to make that happen each year. And that lake-wide survey is a critical element of the overall approach. DEP divers removed plants from 2 areas after this complete survey in 2014, from only 2 areas, and about 65 gallons of plants. There are different ways to measure plants. This is the way we do it, but just remember the number 65 for a point of reference. This is a photograph of variable leaf water milfoil in flower in Annabessacook yesterday. It's the most common water milfoil, invasive water milfoil in Maine and also New Hampshire, not in Vermont. The water chemistry is different in Vermont. They have much more Eurasian water milfoil than we do. It's native to some parts of the United States, but not to the Northeast. It can grow in depths. We typically see it in depths of 5 to 10 feet, maybe up to 12 feet. Its depth that it will grow is limited by the visibility. It can create large, bushy plants that come to the surface. It can be very dense and, needless to say, hinder human activities, but also change the plant structure of the lake. We don't have evidence of seed production or viable seed production, but we know for sure that this plant fragments very easily. Wind and wave action, and certainly animals going through it, boat props, paddles, can fragment it easily and potentially spread the population. Each place where a leaf comes off is a node, and you can get a small root or an adventitious root growing off a node from which a new plant could grow. I mentioned that the plant was first found rooted in 2014. This image is a map that was produced prior to a bass fishing tournament that was going to take place later in 2014. The key thing to note here is that at that time, we had a population in the south end, small population in the south end, and a small population in the north end that we knew of at that time. Again, this is 2014, October of 2014. The overall management of this invasive plant in the lake has involved a lot of players, and I want to make sure that we all recognize that and realize it's not just one entity doing the work. Speaking from DEP, anything that we're doing that we're involved with requires significant help and collaboration and cooperation from local groups. And Annabessacook and the other lakes in the Cobbossee Watershed District are fortunate to have the support of all these different groups. Alia, I don't have to tell you about your lake association. I am told that it is the oldest, I believe the longest running lake association in the state. I worked for the Cobbossee Watershed District in the early 90s and spent some time with some Alia members, including Gus Saragusa and Tom Hughes. So I have some long connection to Alia, and more recently to Sunil and others. Alia has been doing a lot of the volunteer surveying that Cobbossee Watershed District has organized. Cobbossee Watershed District, of course, does water quality monitoring, water level management, and has been going since '73. By the way, I listed these in alphabetical order. Cobbossee Yacht Club Lake Association, you might wonder why they're on this list. Well, they are downstream and very much interested in what's happening in Annabessacook. They're already dealing with the Eurasian water milfoil and European frogspit, and they have certainly a vested interest in what is upstream. There's a group that Friends of Cobbossee Watershed has established, the camp group, so it involves Cobbossee and Annabessacook representatives. The DEP, enough about us, the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, they've worked with all these groups, gradually working on reducing the spread of the plant. For example, with seining restrictions, and also working with the commissioner of our agency, DEP, on a surface use restriction, which I'll mention later. Friends of the Cobbossee Watershed is, of course, working throughout the drainage to conduct boat inspections and to coordinate manual removal and fundraising for this effort. And then lakefront property owners, you all provide the eyes for all these groups. Spread prevention and detection. Courtesy boat inspections are ongoing and have, of course, been moved over to Augusta West Campground because of the closure of the ramp. Monmouth closed the Wagon boat access in 2018, and thanks to the owners of the Augusta West Campground, public access is maintained. The Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife has plans to develop a new ramp on the lake. The surface use restriction is a specific part of Maine law that allows the commissioners of DEP and Fish and Wildlife to jointly issue an order. They have to agree to this order that restricts use of an area that has a documented infestation of an invasive aquatic plant. And that was done has been done last year and this year with the objective of limiting spread of this plant within the lake. I mentioned IF&W and seining. These are nets that are used to collect bait for wholesale bait collection. And IF&W has gradually reduced the area that's open to seining, and in 2019, it's the whole lake that is closed to seining. There is a portion of Wilson Stream upstream of Wagon that is open to seining, but the lake proper and a short stretch upstream of Wagon Bridge is not open, is close to seining. There's been significant training of volunteers in plant identification. I mentioned the annual lake-wide survey that's done that has required training to get people on the lookout, and you have some really very accomplished plant surveyors on your shoreline. I was out yesterday on the lake with Ryan Burton and Cobbossee Watershed District and a colleague from our office mapping, and it's just a great help to have those buoy markers out there. ALA and CWD have been working together on that for several years. This image shows the surface use restricted area that was agreed to by the commissioners, again in 2019 and in 2020. Of course, you know where Wagon, the access is that's now closed. The objective was to reduce the fragmentation of plants in this area that could spread elsewhere in the lake or be carried out of the lake. Obviously, closing the access point reduces the likelihood of being carried out of the lake. And again, Augusta West Campground has made it possible for people to continue access. I'm going to summarize the plant removal efforts. Initially, we worked hard to try to get this under control manually. In 2014, DEP did removal by divers in the north end, and where Wilson Stream enters the lake, I'm going to call that, I'll refer to that area as the Wilson Stream Delta. So this is beyond that windy, narrow stream and then out into the lake. In 2015, Cobbossee Watershed District, DEP, and Friends of Cobbossee Watershed did 12 different dives May through September, mostly in that Delta area. Again, in 2016, we were back, fewer dives by the DEP, but more milfoil was removed. We focused again on Wilson Stream Delta area and also in the north end. The plants began to grow larger in the north end. And that year, a couple of Friends of the Cobbossee Watershed divers were trained in removal. In 2017, in between each year, there were meetings with the groups involved, and the DEP determined that we could no longer lead this effort due to other demands. And it looked like it was becoming not a rapid response for eradication effort, but a long-term management effort. And the local groups took the lead on the removal. There was a Friends of Cobbossee Watershed diver, and the CWD provided boat support. and the group's friends also hired a contractor for 40 hours to do removal. And then in 2018, the manual removal effort really ramped up, where this contractor was hired, the same contractor was hired for 6 weeks. And remember the 65 gallons that was removed in 2014, they removed over 23,000 gallons of milfoil from the lake. In 2019, just last year, the contractor was there for 10 weeks and removed 38,000 gallons from the Wilson Stream Delta area alone. Clearly, there's been an expansion and also an explosion of the plant growth over the last few years. This image from the Combahee Watershed District is 2018, and it shows the known locations. You recall the image from 2014 prior to the bass tournament had an area here by Wilson Stream and an area in the north. And now we've got a larger area. It doesn't show the extent here, but the growth was larger here. The growth was larger in the north. And we also had several other areas on the lake where variable leaf water milfoil had been documented. These were all areas that were confirmed by DNA analysis. Remember I said there's some that can be a challenge in identifying the plants. These were all confirmed that they were the invasive variable leaf water milfoil. Herbicides in Maine may be used for, as it says in law, for the purpose of restoring biological communities. So, well, what does that mean? That there is room for interpretation there. What we take it to mean is that it is for a restoration project as opposed to being for a long-term management project. It's an opportunity to either eradicate or maybe considerably knock back a population to allow for long-term removal without herbicides. The department's first priority for use is rapid response to new infestations where we have the potential for eradication. Some examples of those efforts are listed there below. Pickerel Pond was a response to hydrilla, and that response actually lasted 9 years of treatments. There was a private pond in Scarborough, and that project appears to be successful. We have not seen hydrilla return to that, and the reason we went after it so hard is that it was the only known population of hydrilla in the state at that time. There's a private pond in Scarborough with Eurasian water milfoil, the first known pond with Eurasian water milfoil. We responded with herbicides there. That was not successful. It did not work there. Salmon Lake in Belgrade, we used herbicides after trying to control that manually for a year. We have not seen Eurasian water milfoil return there. It appears to be successful. I say it appears because it's hard to believe that you can eradicate a plant. And I wouldn't be surprised if somehow somebody said, hey, guess what? There's one plant in Salmon Lake, or we found it actually. We don't let our guard down. Another lake with hydrilla was Damascotta Lake in Jefferson, where we haven't seen hydrilla there after a strong rapid response. And then Combahee Lake in Winthrop, where last year we treated Eurasian water milfoil. Where these have been successful is where we have an apparently new infestation. It hasn't become well established, and it's confined to a small area. Then the question is, okay, what about established infestations? Are there any circumstances where we can justify treating an established infestation, which is what is on Annabessacook, with an herbicide and still be in keeping of restoring biological communities? As I said, our priority is rapid response to new infestations that can be eradicated. We have been working for quite some time on a document that describes conditions under which the DEP will consider using herbicides on an established infestation. I have that document. I'm glad to provide it to anybody who would like to see it. I can send it to you. We spent a lot of time thinking about this and thinking about it carefully. There are responsibilities of the local association or groups in this process. The objectives of the treatment on Annabessacook that is being proposed is to prevent further spread within the lake and to other lakes, and to reduce the population that it can be managed manually with a sustainable effort. The staff guidance that we developed recognizes that there are situations where an entity or a group of organizations may make a considerable effort, a significant effort of time, resources, volunteer time to get an infestation under control without the use of herbicides, but then not see it achieve the objective. In other words, you work really hard at it and you realize we can't sustain this. We can't sustain this effort of removal annually. And we need to knock it back to a level where we can control it. And that's the situation that we have in Annabessacook. This map is hot off the press actually just this afternoon. Becky Schaffner, who's our Geographic Information System specialist, she and Ryan Burton and I were on the lake yesterday, and we visited areas that we already had areas marked for treatment, but we needed to refine the areas. And she did the mapping and then produced this map by mid-afternoon so I could show you tonight. These are the areas, and I'm glancing to my right here because my screen's bigger over here. These are the areas proposed for treatment. And we actually have added a few initially that we didn't have on the list. These are the areas proposed for treatment. The total area is about, well, I can't read that right now, but at any rate, it's about 66 acres. I think it's actually more than that. But these are the areas proposed for treatment. The large area in the south, of course, that's where Wilson Stream comes in. We have an area coming up the shore. This is near where the Brannings live. And then Hoyt Brook, there have been some plants confirmed there. We have an area in the north end, especially on the east side of this. This is a fairly large area. And then this cove here has 3 very small areas. I mean, really just a plant or 2 here and there. And then near where Amanda Meter is, it's a fairly large area and a couple small areas moving toward the campground. And then finally in Jug Stream, there is an area of concentrated plant growth. Those are the areas proposed for treatment. And next week, I will go out with the herbicide applicator to review those spots. The product that is proposed for use is something called Procelicor EC. This is the trade name. The active ingredient is fluoroperoxyfen benzyl. This is a relatively new product for use in aquatic control. It was registered by the EPA in September of 2017. The chemical, this fluoroperoxyfen benzyl, is a synthetic version of a plant hormone. It causes excessive cell growth such that the plant cells can't manage that growth. They grow too fast and it kills the plant. You have to have actively growing plant present to have the results. The product label lists susceptible plants, and there are some native plants that are susceptible to this. One of them is coontail, another is water shield, and there is coontail certainly in Annabessacook, so there could be some effects of on our native plants. I'll get to that a little bit because we have to monitor for that. This chemical in another trade name is used for weed control in rice paddies. Again, it's a synthetic plant hormone. That's how it works. These are some of the susceptible plants. And it is a preferred product due to the toxicology of the product and the relatively short contact time required. We never say any product is safe. We talk about the degrees of risk, and the level of risk presented by this product is lower than other products that we have in our permit for treating aquatic plants. In fact, there are no restrictions for drinking water. I will add that we never advise people to drink lake water for a number of reasons. There are also no restrictions for swimming, fishing, and other recreational uses. So what are the risks known of fluoroperoxyfen benzyl? There are numerous documents on the risks, and they're summarized in various places. There's a great resource out of Washington State. Ultimately, it comes down to the EPA registration. Pesticides must be registered by the EPA, and the EPA considers how and where the pesticide will be used. The studies of the environmental fate, or what happens when the pesticide gets into the environment, and the toxicity studies for mammals and non-target organisms. After evaluating all available data, the EPA granted reduced risk status for this active ingredient due to the reduction to both the environment and to the low risk, relatively low risk to human health. Into making this determination, the EPA considered the sensitivities of infants and children and determined that no safety factors needed for infants and children. It's not likely to be cancer-causing or gene damaging. The bioaccumulation in the environment, that is moving up the food chain, will it move as organisms eat other organisms? It is shown to be unlikely. It has low acute toxicity to birds, mammals, and bees, and I quote, it is called practically non-toxic. On this note, we needed to get approval from Inland Fisheries and Wildlife for using an herbicide in the lake, and they requested that we wait until after July 15th due to the breeding and fledging period for American bittern. There is chronic toxicity for 2 invertebrates from this product, and no toxicity of fish and aquatic organisms in most cases at the highest level tested. So again, it is relatively low risk, but there is always risk. There are some advisories for this product, that the product should not be used for any residential or non-agriculture irrigation, such as shoreline property, use for irrigation of residential landscape plants and homeowner gardens, golf course irrigation, non-residential property irrigation around business or industrial properties. And that's for 3 days following the treatment. If we go forward with this treatment, we are required to post at public access points any advisories. These advisories come directly from the label, the registered label that is the EPA registered label of this product. Another advisory is to not use the water for hydroponic greenhouse or nursery irrigation before contacting the DEP to confirm the herbicide is dissipated. And there's no swimming restriction for this product, but we advise residents not to swim within the treated areas on the day of treatment as an added safety measure, really more for the fact that there will be a boat, most likely an airboat, that is in the area. We want to avoid any potential for collision. And in the very unlikely event of a spill where there's a higher concentration of product, we want to make sure that there's no chance that somebody would be in contact with that. Our permit does require monitoring. We have to survey at least 3 of the treatment areas for the plant populations that are there, not just the target population. So the target population is variable leaf water milfoil. We'd like to kill that as much as we can. And then the native plants we also have to monitor for. We don't want to have major impacts on the native plants. So we survey for both the target and also the native plants. We also will be taking samples in the treatment areas after treatment. We did this in Cobbessy last year with this product, and we did it at 1 hour post-treatment, 6 hour post-treatment, and 24 hours post-treatment. After 24 hours post-treatment, we found no detectable concentrations of the product in the lake. It appears to be bound to organic matter very quickly, taken up by the plants quickly, and also it is affected by light that degrades it. The next steps in the process are to submit the notice of intent. The notice of intent is essentially an application. We need to submit the application to another bureau within the department, the Bureau of Water Quality Management, that we want to treat this, and then we need to get their approval. A week from today, the contractor will come up also with a representative from the company that produces the chemical, and to do a survey of the lake. Between then, in the following week, we will be on the water surveying plants in at least 3 of the areas proposed for treatment. And the treatment is likely to occur on the 21st if we get the approval from the Division of Water Quality Management. After the treatment, we need to do the follow-up herbicide concentration monitoring until it's no longer detectable per the test. And also we'll have to do some plant surveying. In addition to the concern about the American bittern, there are 2 state-listed, that is rare, aquatic plants in the lake. One is a very tiny plant in the north end that is smaller than a grain of rice. The other is a rooted plant in the south end. After surveying the lake yesterday, I found that rooted plant in at least 3 other areas of the lake. So that's a good sign. If it is affected in the one area we're proposing to treat, it has a lot of other populations, at least 3 other strong populations in the lake. And the small plant in the north end, it does not appear likely to be affected by it. So I don't think we're going to see major effects on those 2 rare plants. And as we had to get approval from Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, we have to get the okay from the natural areas programs regarding the plants. Post-treatment surveys should not say EWM, it should say, because that's Eurasian water milfoil, apologize for that typo, should say VWM for variable water milfoil. With that, I am going to stop sharing my screen and we will get back to seeing people, which I much prefer to seeing nothing. Thank you for your time and patience. And Karen?
Yeah, are you ready for a couple of questions?
Yeah.
The first one came from Tamara. She wants to know if the herbicide treatments that you had mentioned early in your presentation, they were not all the same herbicide, which is correct. So does this factor in as well?
Yes, let's see. They were...
Like Salmon Lake was...
Salmon Lake was 2,4-D,
right,
which I mean, they're all the products that were proposed that we have used are considered systemic herbicides in that they are meant to kill the entire plant rather than just kill the foliage. The product in Pickerel Pond was one that required 60 to 90 day contact time. You had to maintain a relatively low population, it was a relatively low concentration, but maintain it for a long period of time. And that was true of the failed project in Scarborough. And it was also true of Damascotta, and that one appears to be successful, although actually, I take that back about Damascotta. We don't find the plant there, but it's not because of the herbicide. The herbicide was not very successful. It was the manual removal and the use of a barrier to smother that plant. So I'm not sure I'm getting your question quite right, Tamara, but we try to use products that are systemic, that kill the entire plant. This product that we're using now, it's very promising in the low toxicity and the very short contact time. It is, at the moment, certainly a preferred product.
I just wanted to add, it was less a question and more of a, I wanted for the rest of everyone to know that you can't really compare apples to oranges in that case. Like it was a difference in product that was being used.
Very much so. Yes, thank you.
Okay, next one's from Mike Levy. He wants to know if he can get a copy of the map that is hot off the press. I said Alia will be receiving that map for sure.
Yes, in fact, Mike, I sent it to, well, I know Kent has it, Sue has it, right? Sue, you got that email, I think. I sent that earlier this afternoon. So, and it will be posted on, if you Google, it's not there yet, but if you Google Maine DEP invasive aquatic plants, in the upper right-hand corner, there's a box that Mary Breton set up for information on the treatment project. Who knows, maybe she's posting it right now, but it will be available.
Okay. Another question from Mike. The pre and post-treatment survey is DEP, you said in the presentation, is doing the pre. You didn't mention who was going to do the post-treatment plant survey.
The DEP will also do the post-treatment plant survey. We may get assistance from the Friends or from the Copsey Watershed District. If they've been great and always willing to help if possible, but we will organize that.
And then, is there any conditions that would prevent application on the target date? Which is what, again, July 17th, maybe?
July 21st.
21st?
I suppose if there's some extraordinary weather event that a hurricane or something like that, nothing comes to mind at the moment, since in some other projects where we're working in systems with more flow, we have to be aware of that. For example, Salmon Falls River on the Maine-New Hampshire border, there's it's much more of it's still a lake, but it's more riverine, and you have to be aware, if you're going to have a lot of runoff, that it may dilute the concentration. So if there's some weather event that could possibly minimize the effect of the efficacy, that I suppose could postpone it.
Okay. And the PowerPoint presentation has been copied, and how would people get that information? How would they get a copy of the PowerPoint show?
The recording?
Yeah, or just a copy of the presentation itself?
I mean, I suppose I could make a PDF of the presentation. I don't, there's some notes on it, and I could get that to somebody, but if they wanted a copy of the recording, Mary will post the recording online. Is that right?
Yeah, yes, she said.
Posted on the invasive aquatic plant page for DP.
So the PowerPoint question came from Mike Levy also. Carol Branning wants to know, is there going to be any posted post-treatment to indicate swimmers and boaters should stay away from the treated area? Will there be anything posted post-treatment to tell swimmers and boaters to stay away from the treated area?
Will there be anything posted post-treatment?
Mm-hmm.
Probably not, because we can put we'll have the advisory. We have to post at access sites. So that would be Augusta West Campground. I would post it at Wagon, even though it's closed to trailers. And if people have any other obvious access points where I should post them, please unmute and tell me. But, and there may be, we'll see. I mean, there may be a press release associated closer to the treatment. But we'll post those advisories that will include the swimming restriction at least the morning of, but ideally a day or two before. Well, let's see, the treatment's on a Tuesday, so probably the Monday before, so people will be aware of that. I mean, certainly the areas near the campground are going to be the most, that's where the most population, the concentrated population is. But it would just be prior to the treatment that we post it. not afterwards, because there's really no place to do it. We need to post pre-treatment, and it will state that that advisory is for the day of treatment.
Okay.
And Karen, just back to Mike, if my email is not up anymore, I guess, but if Mike wants to get the copy of the presentation, John McFedrin at maine.gov, john.mcphedran. I can just put it in the chat.
Okay. He's waving, thank you. If the treatment, we've got a few more here. I've got to go up, scroll up a little bit. Can we, is DEP all right with putting the PowerPoint or the recording on Friends and Annabessacook's Facebook page? I think we'd have to ask permission of our
PowerPoint
station
recording.
director.
I was thinking about the map, Karen.
Oh, really? Okay. She's thinking about the map. Yeah,
Yeah, that's okay.
that's okay. Thank you, Tony, for clarifying that. Have a few thank yous from people saying for all you do. We thank you. And if the treatment is successful, would we expect to see dead plants and or fragments washing ashore?
You would expect to see dead plants, yes, especially in the Wilson Stream area. I think you'd see more likely dead plants and fragments. We use this in Cobbessy, but there were very few. There was so little plant matter. There was so little Eurasian water milfoil that we really didn't see great evidence. I think you're going to see more of that here. We hope that's the objective. When you treat a large area of a lake, you have to be concerned about the biological oxygen demand that happens after the plants die, because it can take it uses oxygen in the water, and there's potential for fish kills. In this case, the southern treatment area by Wilson Stream is relatively large, but there's still a lot of water exchange there. And in all the other areas, there's a significant water exchange. Some areas are much smaller. We don't anticipate any problems with that, but with the oxygen demand. But I do expect you should see a lot of dead plants if it's successful, but probably not a lot of fragments.
Okay, and Carol Branning is reminding everyone that Wagon Road is closed to all watercraft. I think that was in response to your comment that you would post something there, post the sign about treatment.
Right, okay. Yep.
Okay, and is there any concern about eating fish post-treatment?
Because of the herbicide, no. I think I commented on the bioaccumulation. It's very unlikely there's bioaccumulation. If you have a specific question about, I have information in the file here of what fish were tested, but again, the risks were very low and very low likelihood of bioaccumulation. So with respect to the herbicide, I would say low risk. There are other things in fish that we all have heard about, so there may be other risks, but with respect to this herbicide, I would say low risk.
Okay. And based on the earlier excellent question about dead plants, should we, Friends of Copsey Watershed, be ready to remove dead plants or just let them decompose?
I would not. I would let them decompose.
Unless they're washing up on your shore, it's okay to remove them, right?
Yes.
But I wouldn't go out and do a
No.
concerted effort at removing. Okay. Will the restricted areas?
Here, let me just add to that, though. I mean, that area, I still don't. I think you're going to need to or want to go out and remove, but it will be interesting to see the effect on that area because it's especially the Wilson Stream area and in the north end because there's very dense growth there.
Will the restricted areas be open after treatment, or will they remain closed?
The current surface use restriction for the Wilson Stream Delta area runs through the end of the calendar year. However, if plant surveys show that this was an effective treatment, it could be that that's revisited before the end of the season. We haven't thought about that. I haven't discussed that with Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. But if the plants are killed to the extent that the risk is really, ideally eliminated for the season, if not very low, there may be some requests of the commissioners to reopen it for the rest of the year. That hasn't come up yet, and we haven't considered it yet, but it is a possibility that things would change based on the treatment.
Okay. And finally, is there a chance that there could be a second treatment this summer?
I would have to say I doubt it.
Great.
I'd have to say I doubt that. Yeah.
Yep. So I believe I got everyone's question. If I did not, if I mistakenly missed your question, would you please unmute and ask it at this point?
Oh, just one thing I noticed here, Ryan Burton reminded me about posting the hand carry access above the jug stream, above the dam.
Good man.
Thank you, Ryan.
So nothing has come in yet. So I think we are done with questions at this point.
If anybody wants to contact the department, you can always email milfoil@maine.gov. That comes to me. And again, I want to acknowledge the help of all the organizations that we're working with. And yesterday, Ryan Burton and Becky Schaffner from our group, because I did not think we'd have a new map to pass out this afternoon. So that was just a big help. So we'll be moving forward and posting. Mary Breton will be posting information on the website. Again, if you Google Maine DEP invasive aquatic plants, you should come up to our homepage. If you have any problems, you can email us. And I guess at this point, I would just say we have 32 people on us. If somebody, and I didn't say at the start that we had till 8:30, so I'm not suggesting that we stay till 8:30. But if somebody has any last thing or they want to say, they could raise their hand, or you could go ahead and unmute yourself. Otherwise, I think that we will wrap it up. So